Okay, hello everybody. It's Leslie here from Water New Zealand. I'm just going to kick off because we've just hit 2:31 and it looks like there's just a few of us at the moment, so hopefully we'll be having other people join us as the webinar goes on. We haven't used webinar technology a whole lot at Water New Zealand, so if I'm doing anything crazy and you see weird things popping up on your screen, you're all muted to me at the moment, but you can unmute yourself, and so please do let me know if anything looks completely strange. So other than that, I'll just launch into things. This is kind of a first principles introduction to the National Performance Review for those of you who haven't been involved before. There's also a few bits and pieces that I'll be sharing with you that are more relevant to people that have participated, and just kind of refinements from indicators that have changed a little bit in previous years. But the main goal today is to run through, let me see if I can get my slides to click over, how the data collection worksheet works, some of the definitions that are a bit problematic. We've got a new section of our website for question and answers, so I'll show you that and show you some of the questions that have arisen already, which might be relevant to all of you. And then also we've got Miles Wyatt from ACOM joining us on the line, and he provides the independent audits for the National Performance Review, so he'll be going through what's going to be involved in that process this year. Submission timelines, and hopefully we get through all of this pretty quickly. If you have any questions at the end though, we'll hang around and have a Q&A session for anybody that wants to stick around for that. You can also unmute yourself using the webinar controls as I'm running through things and ask questions if you want to, and there's a chat function as well, which I'll try and keep an eye on. So feel free to send me any questions via the chat function as we move through the content today. Okay, so without further ado, you should all have received your data collection worksheets last week. If you haven't, please get in touch. There's just a couple of quirks that I wanted to show you with these in case you run into trouble. So I'm going to bring up a copy of Ashburton's, just because they start with A, and show you some of those. So the first thing that I have pointed out in the emails, but seems to be sort of a bit of a theme with some council systems, is that macros aren't always enabled. It's going to look different depending on what version of Microsoft you're using, but just important to check if you are able to receive macro-enabled spreadsheet that you enable those macros. So on my computer, there's a little banner and it says enable content. If you're having trouble with the macros, do not fear. They only do a couple of small things, so I'm just going to show people a manual workaround for that as well. So macros are enabled, which means as I'm entering data on water supply charges, which some of you have a whole lot of, if you've got multiple schemes and they're all charged differently, like for example Ashburton, they have 12 different charging regimes, or at least they did last year. If I enter 12, a whole lot of cells will appear to the right, so you can put in separate values. If you don't have the macros working on your spreadsheet, it's not a big deal. So for example, if there's nothing in there, you can just, actually I need to clear that field totally. If there's nothing in there, you can just unhide those fields and enter the values. And the same thing happens on the wastewater tab where there's multiple wastewater treatment plants. So again, there's 3 in Ashburton. You'll be left with 3 columns to enter your information if you've got the macros working. Otherwise, just manually unhide those and you'll be able to enter your data by manually unhiding, clicking the top right columns and clicking unhide. So that's the only real quirk on the spreadsheet, and it is addressed in the instructions. That's got a link to somewhere where you can go in Microsoft to figure out how to disable them. Hopefully that doesn't cause too many hitches, but get in touch if it does. The other thing that this spreadsheet or this instruction sheet does is just sort of run you through where you can find the data definitions. So I can click on that link and it'll take you to the Water New Zealand website. Let me just share that screen with you. Hopefully you're now looking at the Water New Zealand data definition guidelines, and all of these measures have a summary on the spreadsheet, but there's often a lot more detail within the definition guidelines if you're running into trouble. So they're your first point of call. And where we've got measures that have got changes on them from previous years, there's a little blue box noting what the changes are. So for example, internal staff, some questions arose last year about how to categorise certain types of supporting roles, and now there's extra detail in the definition. So that's the definition guideline. Let me go back to the main spreadsheet. Now we've got some instructions about what needs to go in each, we've got some instructions about what needs to go in each cell, and one I just wanted to point out to everybody is that on this instruction sheet, the data confidence field, which you'll note is a drop-down box, saying how good you think your data is, has some definitions around that on the instruction sheet as well. So if you're saying your data is highly reliable or audited, to us that means that you've got a formal process for collecting the data and all of your staff know about it and follow it. Or if you're very uncertain, you don't really have any procedures, you don't have any processes, and it's sort of a guesstimate. So that's the data confidence field. The 2017-18 field will be pre-populated if you've participated previously. If it was 2016-17, you should see that data there as well. If you have any issues with that, let me know. We won't retrospectively change the data, but if anything goes wrong, you can include it in the comments field. And the comments field's just a general spot for information that you think might make the audit process useful. There's a couple of other fields that are optional but will make life easier for you and the auditor as well. So where you got the information from and who reported it definitely helps for people that are coming into the reporting process if the person that did it before them's completed it. So, and it might help you if you're trying to trace down where you got a number from in the future and check it's correct. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I think I wanted to say on the data collection sheet. I'll move on now to some of the definitions for data that's been a little bit problematic in previous years, or areas where we haven't got a lot of consistency that have been picked up either through our audit process or external reviews. So for that, I'm going to sort of have a bit of a technology experiment with you here, and I've got a poll set up that I will launch now, and this should show you a range of indicators and ask you questions about how you think things should be categorized through them. So if you have the data definitions guidelines available, feel free to use these. And if everybody could just go through and reflect on the indicators and tick which box you think's correct. And I wanted to use that as a prompt to get people started thinking about the measures, and then we'll go and actually clarify what responses should be there. So hopefully this is live for you all now, and I'll stop talking for a second and give people a chance to look at these and reflect on them, and come back to you in about a minute, maybe 2 minutes, to sort of see if we're all on point or if there are indicators where we're all over the show and we should spend more time on them. And if people are having trouble voting, please let me know.
Is the voting anonymous, Leslie?
Oh, yes, thanks, Miles, for that question. The voting is anonymous, so you don't feel guilty if you get the wrong answer. I really just wanted to encourage everybody to have a think about. Yeah.
Right.
Good question. Thank you. Okay, it's looking like we don't have a whole lot of keen voters. We've had a couple of people cast votes, so I might just quickly run you through the answers. And we're getting a couple more coming in now. Actually, I'll give you another 20 seconds if you want to add anything else, and then we'll just run through and clarify where things should be entered for these. Okay, you're at 4 minutes, guys. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results with you. So the first one, we've had a couple of questions on this already this year. Hopefully you're viewing the poll results. And the first one, do farming properties count as non-residential or residential properties? This is relevant to both the water, wastewater and stormwater sections of the data collection sheet. Is everybody's in the room is on point on that one there, and non-residential classified as non-residential properties, just because there's often quite a lot of water going to stock and things as well. Another question that came up a lot last year when we split operational maintenance categories into routine and reactive maintenance is, what should I do if I don't have the split? And again, everybody that responded to the poll did so correctly. If you can just include this in your reactive maintenance field and let us know that you don't have the split available, and we'll work around that when we get to reporting. With another one about how properties are recorded. So with stormwater service properties, lots of, well, not lots, but there's portions of the country where stormwater soak pits and things are used to service properties rather than actually piped connections. So in those cases, you can just, well, in all cases, look at the amount of rateable property is receiving a rate that covers stormwater. So that might be a direct targeted rate, or it might be part of an urban amenity rate or something. So with stormwater services, we consider the number of people that are serviced by the stormwater system to be the number of people paying towards its upkeep. So everyone benefits from having roads that aren't flooded, for example, which is how that definition was arrived at. The length of the water supply network should include laterals, but only those that are owned by the council, so not within private properties. And not everybody has this information available to them, or sometimes it's just too hard to get out the information on laterals. So if you don't, again, please let us know in the comments field that that's missing. That'll be a deviation from others, so we'd like to know that you haven't, if you haven't included laterals. A similar question on the stormwater network. So at the moment we've got pipes, culvert and lined channels included, and it used to say unlined channels as well, but then it was kind of pointed out that swales are pretty much the same as unlined channels, and often not recorded in asset management systems. So unlined channels has dropped off the definition for this year. But if you have culverts and line channels included in your asset management system and you know the length of those, include them in the total length of the stormwater network field. And if you don't have that information, please let us know in the definition, in the comments section as you're reporting. And everybody seemed clear about whether or not stock water races should be included in the length of the water supply network. They shouldn't. So just another question that had popped up in checks of the information. Very good. So that's kind of what I wanted to clarify with you from previous year's reports. We've had already a few questions come through this year though, and if you have questions you can either email me directly, or we've got a website which we've set up where we're trying to encourage participants to sort of talk to each other. At the moment it's just me talking to people through that website, but let me show it to you, and I'd encourage you to look at it if you think it could be useful for other people and use this. So hang on, new share. Hopefully I'm sharing Chrome with you. Yes, I am. And here we go. So hopefully now you're all back looking at the definitions guide, but I'll just take you to the main homepage of Water New Zealand and show you where you can access our new FAQ type section for the National Performance Review. So if you go into projects and benchmarking and the National Performance Review homepage, you'll find a discussion login section. I'm already logged into the Water New Zealand webpage, but if you're not, you can log out and log in there, and yeah, you navigate by going to projects and benchmarking, National Performance Review, and the login for the discussion forum is there. And you'll see that there's a few questions that have been posed already. So one was that there was an incorrect definition for the contracted staff in the sheet. My apologies for that. And a corrected definition for contracted staff is there. It's your pre-populated spreadsheets say something about near misses, so I'm sure no one's going to miss that. And then a couple of other questions that were again oversights, which we've added clarification on. So with new questions that ask about retired staff and staff training, which is designed to feed into work that's going on in the industry on understanding our workforce and future professional development needs. It was unclear whether contractors should be included as well as internal staff, and we've clarified that by saying if you have the contractor information, put it in, and please let us know whether you did or didn't via the comments. So yeah, that's there for anybody that wants to use the questions in a public way, and depending on the types of questions we get, I'll probably be sharing that with other participants as they report, but we'll also focus on those measures during the audits. So that probably takes us through to the next bit I wanted to talk to you about quite nicely. We've got Miles, who you heard before from ACOM, on the line, and I'll share with you some slides that Miles put together. Hi, Miles.
Hi.
I'll take you now back to our slides, and let me see. Miles, you're seeing the slides?
Yes, yes.
Very good. So over to you, Miles, and if you could just take people through your audit process, I'll click us through them.
Yeah, just go to the next one. That'll be fine. Okay. I guess the main point here is there is some science behind the measures that get audited. And I guess probably another factor, Leslie, might be the number of questions you get about different measures as well. So that will be interesting. I think last year we ended up with about 35 measures that got audited. I'm guessing we'll probably have a similar number this year. The main thing about that list of 35 or whatever it's going to be, it doesn't mean you're going to get asked a question about every one of those 35 measures or whatever. If your response, the data value is okay and the supporting information is okay, then it's likely you won't get a question. So I think that's all I want to highlight there. If we go to the next one. So what is the auditor looking for? I do get a consolidated view of the data from Leslie, which I slice and dice in things like Power BI, so I can sort of do my own analysis for the measures that we're going to audit as well, and sort of identify organisations that I do need to ask questions. But I guess generally I'm looking at the data and the explanations and just sort of saying to myself, does that all make sense? And if there's any doubt in my mind, then I will formulate a question which I'll go back to you with. The other thing that does sort of happen from time to time is that for a valid reason, sometimes data gets repeated from the previous year. That's not great, but if that's all you can do, then that's okay. But one thing to look at when you do that is that because that's old data, the data confidence is now reducing. So if it was good last year and you've repeated that data this year, then the data confidence is probably average or something less than what it was the previous year. The other thing I find interesting is that I think last year there were 2 stormwater measures related to network models, and one was, do you have a network model, and then do you have a network model that's calibrated? And some organisations would answer yes to the calibrated, but no to the non-calibrated question. So you need to sort of look at your answers and sort of see how they stand in relation to other questions. I can't think of any other examples, but that one stood out for me. And the other thing we're looking for is just sort of feedback, outside of the 35 measures or whatever we're going to look at. We're just sort of looking for feedback on the overall process, and any other measures you might want to provide feedback on as well. And the process, so we're looking at probably having 10 participants. I think, was it 12 we had last year, Leslie? I think it was 12. So it'll probably be about 10 this year, and that's more to do with time and budget. But anyway, so we come up with a list of participants. Then between AECOM and Water New Zealand, we come up with a list of audit measures. Once the data returns have been submitted back to Water New Zealand by those organisations that are identified for being involved in the audit, I'll then go through each of those data return spreadsheets and start formulating questions. Once I've formulated all those questions, I'll then send, I'll do the formulating of questions in the spreadsheet and return it to the audit participants. What sort of worked out last year, more by chance than anything else, is that several organisations sort of responded back to me with answers to my questions or whatever. And then I found that just made the conversation afterwards much easier. So this year I think I'll be asking or hoping that everybody responds in writing first before we then have a telephone discussion. So after that, there is then the telephone discussion, and out of that comes a report which then goes back to Water New Zealand and sort of becomes part of the final presentation of outcomes, I guess. So that's it, I think.
That's great. Thanks, Miles. Yeah, so anybody can look at that final report. It's available on our website, and it's also quite important in informing the new indicators and the definitions that we'll use in the subsequent years. So, yes, that's wonderful. Thank you, Miles.
One thing I didn't highlight in the previous slide is that I think I made the comment there that more is best. So we get the odd spreadsheet where you just get a data value and that's all it says. It doesn't say who the reporter was, what the source was, and there's no supporting commentary. So the more information about where the data value came from and how you got it, that helps me immensely. And yeah, it could be the difference between getting asked a question and not getting asked a question.
Yes, that's a good point. And it also helps other people who have to clean up who might be responsible for reporting in the next year. So quite helpful.
It was funny last year. Sometimes in the comments column, you would get a document management system reference, which means a lot to the organisation, but it doesn't help or mean anything to me, unfortunately. So yeah, even though that comments column is optional, I would say use it to the maximum and tell me as much as you can about how you derive the data values.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thanks very much, Miles.
Thank you.
All right, so the last thing I wanted to talk about was just timelines. Hopefully you've all got your sheets and hopefully it's all running smoothly. If it's not, and there's things we can help with, please let us know. They're due back 25th of October, and then Miles and I will be tag teaming the data tidying process. Miles working on the audit side, and I'll be going through doing a kind of first cut on outliers and things as well. That information all gets pulled together while everybody else is at Christmas, basically. Over December and January, we'll be mushing it all together and adding it to the online portal and into a report to make available to you guys in February, so you can check through it and then enter it into the public domain in March. So yeah, those are our timelines, and that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover with everybody. you all know where to find me. I'm only actually in the office Mondays and Tuesdays at the moment, but I can be reached via email pretty much all the time, and doing work from home and can get back to you fairly promptly on any questions you might have. So get in touch. Otherwise, thanks for joining our webinar. And if you've got anything that you want to ask now, feel free to stick around. I'll ask Miles to hang on the phone for a minute or two as well. But for the rest of you, thanks for joining us. Hope it all runs smoothly. Hope it's not too much work. We really appreciate the effort. It's been a really it's been a really valuable resource the last year for not only we've had a lot better feedback from participants who are actually starting to use the information within their own businesses than we had previously, but also lots of interest from the government trying to work their way through the reform process, and researchers trying to understand what it all means. So it's a hugely valuable contribution that you all make by but I know it's the painful part, pulling the data together. We really appreciate it. So yeah, looking forward to all working with you again this year, and stick around if you've got any questions. Otherwise, hope you all enjoy your afternoons. Okay, cheerio. I'm not going to end this meeting, by the way. I'm just going to hang around in case anybody wants to talk. So feel free to just drop yourselves out.
Hi Leslie, David here.
Hi David.
How are you?
Yeah, good.
I've just got one question. It's just about
sure.
the properties for the sewer and water, etc., mainly for the non-residentials. If we have multiple charges on each of those properties, so we might only have, say, for argument's sake, 500 properties, but we've got 670 charges based on those because they're having different sources and different. They've got more than one sort of area of the water going in and out, and same with the sewage. Do we include those charges, or do we do the properties?
Actually, can I just go to the definitions guideline and check if we've put anything to clarify that? Because I know we have had this question.
I did try and look.
Yeah. Miles, you're welcome to chime in on this as well. Yeah, we haven't given a whole lot of clarity around that, have we? So that it's sort of, the question is sort of, is it the number that because you might have something like a Queensgate that's getting
multiple charges, but
okay, that's one I'm going to have to go away and do my homework. Thanks, David. It's a really good question, and I'll post it on the forum for everybody, but I'll also send it back to you directly as well.
Because it would just probably mean that my numbers from last year might be wrong. That's all. Whichever one we go with.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a good question. And if anybody else has any thoughts on the way they normally report it, that would be helpful.
Cool. That's all for me.
Thank you. Thanks
you, David. Very much for that. Bye-bye.
All right. Cheerio.
Bye.
Okay, Miles, it looks like it's just you and me left on the call with maybe Jared, but he's on his iPad, so I'm guessing he might be having trouble. He probably doesn't have a speaker to talk to us anyway.
Okay.
So that was good. Thanks for that. I should stop recording because nobody probably wants to see. Hang on a sec. Bear with me.